Hey, everybody out there on Facebook Live and YouTube. And of course, it will be available on YouTube for posterity. This is the third edition of the Music Nerds Record Club. I'm Andrew, or Teacher on the Radio. But of course, the Music Nerds began with our annual Best of the Year review back in early pandemic, but we've updated here in 2024 to doing a monthly club to discuss an iconic album and also our current listening favorites. And so tonight on the live stream, our Music Nerds regular cohort is mostly assembled here. We've got from Charlotte, North Carolina, and the Dead Snow Honest Man radio show, we've got Scott Greenberg. From the award-winning college journalist from the Tennessee Tech Oracle newspaper, we have Gus Creeder right here in Cookeville, Tennessee, which is where I'm from also. From Nastyville, Tennessee, from Nash Vegas, from that place, Music City, we've got Rick Quinn and Amy Rock joining us this evening. We might get our brother from up the river from New York City, Joe, to get on in a minute, and we sure hope that he does. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with a short hot take on what I think is the bigger question for me with Prince's Purple Rain is the larger context in which it landed in my life. And then we'll be here, and Joe's on his way, so we'll be hearing after me from Scott, and then Amy, then Joe, then Gus, and then Rick. So I'm going to take you guys off screen as I get ready to launch into my preamble here. So imagine Detroit, Michigan, early 1980s, when my family moved from the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio to the suburbs of Detroit. We wanted to live in a multicultural, multiracial sort of beloved community like Dr. King would speak of. We had this idea of kind of like almost like a liberal utopia. And I lived in Shaker Heights, Ohio, and Southfield, Michigan. Not unlike Shaker, was very multiracial, very multicultural. And if everybody can remember the early 80s, even those of us on the show who weren't born yet, there was, classic rock, like Journey was on the radio. Certainly people were listening to like Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin. And then in the 80s, Michael Jackson, who you already knew from the Jackson 5, he hit really big, and the popularity of Thriller, even to this day, we were kind of experiencing. And I was already getting really into rock at that time. I was really into the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. But this was before my total high school obsession with REM and U2 were to happen. And something about Michael Jackson just didn't quite click to me. And then I remember walking through the school hallway one day and seeing these kids in purple T-shirts talking about this concert that they had just been to, probably at the Joe, that being Joe Louis Arena, where the Detroit Red Wings played. And they had just come back. This is probably ninth grade. They'd just come back from the 1999 tour of somebody called Prince. And I heard that song 1999, and I was immediately addicted. I'd already been obsessed, with the apocalypse that would be Y2K of the year 1999. I thought it was going to be, a nuclear war or something like the Planet of the Apes, which I had been obsessed with. And so this totally apocalyptic, funky, dirty thing was just so beautiful to me. And when I was in elementary school at a predominantly Black school outside of Cleveland, I had been turned on to like the disco movement, the new wave, well, I guess the early new wave, but funk. And I'd heard of Parliament Funkadelic, and there was just something about dance music that spoke to me. And then Prince happened. And to me, Prince, how should I say it? It was everything. I felt like this was the utopia that I thought I was living in here in the 80s. And it's kind of funny to talk about it today in the 2020s, because it feels like in some ways the world has gone backwards, but it was sexy and charismatic. It was spiritual, and it had this kind of sense of artistic genius. And people today talk a lot about post-genre, but this was music to me that it was every genre, and it had no genre. It was pop, R&B, funk, and it was rock and roll. And it was rock and roll made by a Black man from Minneapolis who embraced the color purple like I thought Jimi Hendrix probably did. And we had these bookended jams that the album opens with Let's Go Crazy. It closes with this anthem, this sing-along anthem that's been covered by everybody and their siblings, called Purple Rain. In there in the middle is When Doves Cry, with that incredible guitar riff opening it up. And I still today, I still blush at the lyrics to Darling Nikki. I try to tell my students, that the 70s and the 80s were way more sexually liberated than we are today in some regards. And I think some people think today, because we have made some progress around certain issues, that we're more free to talk about things. But in this day of cancel culture and I don't want to say politically correct, because that's not the right way to say it, but I think we're a little bit more squeamish today in many ways than we were in the 70s and the 80s. Maybe we're more cautious in good ways, less sexist and less, misogynistic or chauvinistic. But Prince was like liberation. It was human liberation in the form of an album. It was beautiful. It was colorful. It was sexy. And it was all of the things that we love about popular music. And it was extremely popular. Everybody loves this album. It doesn't have like haters that I know of anywhere. But it was also avant-garde and cutting edge creativity. And so you could be super popular and be cutting edge at the same time. And it was highly transformative for me coming out the summer before I turned 17. I was 16 years old, year between sophomore and junior year in high school. And this album and its accompanying film to me was like blowing up into being from a boy to a man. It's an incredible experience to have revisited it. Just listening to it this week. I'm going to tip now to who I should be better prepared with my notes. And I hope you guys will just continue to riff gloriously on this. And we're going to turn to Scott Greenberg out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Take it away, Scott.
Thanks, Andy. Hey, everybody. Scott Greenberg, Debt's No Honest Man Can Pay podcast, not radio show, as Andy had identified it, although we behave an awful lot like a radio show. I'm going to follow Andy's lead and talk more about Prince than the actual Purple Rain album. I love Prince. First exposure I had was the single I Want to Be Your Lover, which I thought was pretty cool. But I thought, okay, this is who Prince was. And then I heard Dirty Mind and I heard Uptown. And I'm like, Prince is so much more than this. Prince is a badass. He's dangerous. He's cool. He's definitely blurring the lines. And then I heard Controversy and I was like, OMFG, this guy is the real deal. And I was friends with a bunch of other just obnoxious, punky little Jewish kids, not unlike myself, who were really into Prince. So I really kind of got steeped into that whole Prince lore with Controversy. And then with 1999, and we were listening to this dude on the radio in Detroit, the Electrifying Mojo. And you would sit there late at night and listen to Prince and The Time and Vanity 6 and Devo and the B-52s and Kraftwerk. And it was just like all bets were off. And for me, it's like before Purple Rain was even an idea, I was there, and I was lucky enough to see Prince front row center at the Masonic Temple for 1999. And it was a midnight show, and my parents were cool enough to let me go on a school night nonetheless. And it was one of those just mind-blowing experiences. I can't say Purple Rain is my favorite, but to me, Purple Rain came out the same year as Bruce did with Born in the USA, and I love Bruce. Anybody who knows me knows that Bruce is my boy. And Born in the USA is fine, but it's not my favorite. I recognize it's his iconic album. I have that same relationship with Purple Rain. Listening to it yesterday for the first time in years was great. It was like catching up with an old friend. When it first came out, saw the movie opening day with Andy and Joe. The movie's great from a music performance standpoint, from a narrative standpoint and storytelling standpoint, and from like just is it a cinematic masterpiece? No, not a great movie from that end. If you're watching it for the musical performances, it doesn't get any better, with the exception of Stop Making Sense. Point being is I was a freshman at Michigan State University when Purple Rain was blowing up. I didn't need to own it, because if I just left my door open and walked down the hall, from every room was blasting a different song from Purple Rain. And is Purple Rain a great album? Yes. Did I need to own it? No, because it was oversaturated for me. I love Prince. I will always love Prince. Catching up with it yesterday was great because I got to appreciate it in a much different way than I did when I was oversaturated by it. Songs like Computer Blue kind of revealed themselves to me as the unsung gems. To me, you know, a song like Let's Go Crazy, first time I heard it was great. Every successive time I've heard it since, it's like, okay, I need to hear it like once every several months and I'm good. But when Doves Cry has like serious staying power, it never gets old. And the fact that there's no bass on it and it's funky as it is pretty damn awesome. And even the title track, at first I was kind of like, whatever. The older I get, the more I appreciate the title track. You know, Baby I'm a Star is a banger. I Would Die for You is great. And I highly recommend checking out Lydia Lovelace's cover of it. Is it my favorite Prince album? No. Is it a bad Prince album? No. But Prince absolutely was just, there will never be another one. I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard somewhere that the song Purple Rain was inspired by Bob Seger's Turn the Page. And if that's true, that's really cool for just so many reasons, but especially considering that Night Moves was the first record I ever bought, that makes it even more cool. I don't know if I have anything more to say about Prince other than it was awesome to be alive during a time when Prince was making music. And with that, I will pass it over to Gus or Amy, or yes, I was right on the second guess.
Good enough. Hey, thank you. So I'm 33, and so I wasn't alive in the 80s, and my parents weren't into popular culture in the 80s either. So growing up, I had none of this 80s music that you guys are all like boiled in. So it's just an exercise for me to even imagine what it was like to go see the Purple Rain movie in the theater and that being the first time you hear these songs. Because for me, my experience hearing When Doves Cry and Purple Rain and Let's Go Crazy is just on the radio. And, you know, it's always in the background on the pop station. It's like, yep, that's Prince. And not really taking time to really sit with it or enjoy it or even analyze it. So when I sat down to listen to this as a full album this weekend, it made more sense. I can't say it really clicked with me, and I can't say I'm suddenly a big Prince fan, but I think it's a discography I need to spend a little more time with. Like in high school, somehow I was able to download and get into Queen and David Bowie, and those were big cornerstones for what I got into from there. But somehow the Prince discography didn't come into my torrents, and that's a shame because I think there's a lot of good stuff that would be really enjoyable for me. So anyways, I don't have strong feelings about these songs. They're good. There's When Doves Cry, Purple Rain, I Would Die for You, like they're some of the greatest songs of all time, and I will not argue against that. So that's all I got.
Joe, you have to unmute yourself.
I'm gone.
Okay, good. All right. Yay.
That was it.
Oh, well,
I was talking about going to that movie that night and how crazy packed and, you know, sweaty and on fire it was, you know. Just kind of a sort of mass pop cultural event you don't get these days. In the same way that I don't know if you see records that that sell even remotely close to like some of the big records from that era, like Thriller or Purple Rain or Born in the USA or whichever Madonna's of Madonna's was the big one. But yeah, that mass phenomenon's what I remember most. I have to say I love so many Prince songs. Like I love an endless amount of Prince songs and keep discovering new ones I love, but I would not mark myself as a huge Prince fan. I like this album a lot. It just comes out so fast with, I think, Let's Go Crazy and Take Me With You. There's maybe one or two weaker songs, but overall it's as near to like a banger all the way through. One thing I did find interesting, and Scott as a bassist, anybody can comment on this, but I think for a funky record, it's not very bass heavy. Talked about When Doves Cry not having any bass, but I was listening to that earlier, and it's not. There's no real slamming Bootsy Collins bass. In fact, it's almost like in a way it's got that 80s thin sound to it, even though it's at the same time feels pretty huge. Anyway, I like Purple Rain. I like Prince. What I've listened to most lately of his is that Diamonds and Pearls era live set that came out. That's pretty awesome, and I'm envious of Scott to no end for having seen him then, because I think live was probably the ultimate way to experience Prince with that band just on the spot like that. The studio stuff is cool, but it's full of era specific trickery. But live, I think it's all out there and it's all raw, and that's what I love about that other set. But this is phenomenal. Sign of the Times is my favorite. Anyway, that's it for me. Who's next? Gus.
How's it going? So, yep, my name's Gus Creeder. I am a sophomore at Tennessee Tech University. I'm a copy editor for the Tech Oracle newspaper, and I love this album so much. Both my parents are big music heads, and I mean, when I was born, I feel like I was born loving Prince. There was never a point in my life where I felt like I did not know him. I am a spry young 20-year-old, so the whole time that I've been alive, he's been a legend. And I mean, my biggest memory with this album was my mom. She co-owns a dance studio, and she choreographed a piece to close a recital one year to Purple Rain. And I just remember everybody crying and falling in love with that song, and just thinking it was like one of the most insane, incredible like pieces of music I had ever heard. And now it has been all of these years later, and I have done so many dives into music. I love it. It is how I spend most of my time, is listening and indulging in and writing about and embracing music. And I am still at a point where I like can't believe that some of the songs on this album exist. Like I wrote I've been re-listening to it the last few days, just reacquainting myself with the track list as a whole. And I mean, I understand some of the things said about the album, and it not be, not necessarily being everyone's favorite Prince album. I could see some of the instrumentals, maybe like on a Baby I'm a Star or Beautiful Ones, being like a little bit, or I would fully disagree, but When Doves Cry, saying that it might be a bit of a hollow instrumental compared to some stuff that he would do. I wouldn't say necessarily a lot of stuff that he had already done. I think it's a lot more lush and a lot more grand than a lot of things he had made up to this point. But I mean, Let's Go Crazy is one of the most 80s songs ever to me. It is like a gorgeous and inspirational and existential intro to the album that sets the tone in such a beautiful way. it's like he fully embraced his icon status with this song and with this album and the movie and everything. Like he was so clearly ready to be the icon that he obviously was. And that's one of the things I love most about this album. And, you know, there are like the songs on here that are, you know, hits. Everyone knows these songs. Like you can't not know, like, I guess you can, but Let's Go Crazy is so beloved for a reason. It's so exciting. I mean, When Doves Cry is one of, it's unbelievable. It, like, as the first single for Purple Rain, without, you know, not having that bass in there, it adds this little bit of intensity, like there is something missing, but it's like a chamber of sound where once you realize that it is not needed there, everything makes so much sense and it comes together so perfectly. And I just love the contrasting of like the dove symbolism as an omen of like gentle and beautiful peace with like selfish and violent behaviors of like quarreling lovers. It's so interestingly written and I love it so much. I actually just recently like fell deeply in love with Computer Blue, and I think it's, you know, such a cool story about how that song was changed before it came out and how it evolved. And it's just like, oh my God, it's so funky. And that's like it's really all I need is the level of funk that song has. Darling Nikki is so cool and so like such a funny piece of music history. The role it plays, Tipper Gore being the OG Karen. But it is, I see what you're saying, Mr. Andrew, with this being one that you like still blush at a little bit, because like, yeah, I mean, it is such a sex jam. It's like you couldn't look past it. It's so not steeped in metaphor, like everything had to be at that time. And that's like, it's part of him being such an icon, is that's something he can get away with. And I think that's incredible. And then like Purple Rain as a title track and a closer, it's a song, I've heard this song hundreds of times, and it still, like, even just today, I was getting emotional listening to it. It's so powerful. There are very few albums that, like, and especially soundtracks. I mean, this is the best soundtrack ever to me, because it can be removed from the conversation of a soundtrack album. It does not need to be be associated with the movie to be an incredible soundtrack. And I mean, Purple Rain is, I mean, I don't think I'm embellishing when I say that it is probably the best, most beautiful and most impactful piece of media that I personally have indulged in, is that title track. It blows my mind every time I listen to it. I love Prince so much. Rest in peace to him. And yeah, I genuinely will adore this album for a really long time, and plan to have it in rotation forever. I have it on vinyl. I love listening to it, and yeah, I look forward to learning more about it. I feel like it's an album where no matter how many times you listen to it, there are things that you can still get out of it. No matter how much music you've listened to, no matter how in touch you think you are, there are things to keep finding in this album, and I adore it for that reason. So I think that's about all that I have to say. But yeah, it's this and Sign of the Times are my favorite Prince albums, but this one definitely holds the largest spot in my heart, for sure.
Gus, that was freaking incredible. The OG Karen.
I mean, it's true. It is true.
I remember that PMRC, Parents Music Resource Center,
Yep.
The whole labeling thing, that was huge to us. And we were very militantly against, you know, Tipper Gore. 20 years later, her husband, some people thought he was the savior. And all I could think about was Tipper. I was not a big fan of Al Gore either, because I was like, all I could think about was Tipper Gore. Prince originally said that Purple Rain was to be a country song, and he actually had originally thought about asking Stevie Nicks to collaborate. And I just thought, just for the heck of it, to look up what my streaming service would show as some of the most covered versions of it, and looking at some of the people that have covered it: Dwight Yoakam, Dolly Parton, Bruce Springsteen, Etta James, Leanne Rhymes. So it is
Yeah.
it is very universal. It makes me think of when Tracy Chapman and that guy, the
Luke
big
Combs,
yeah, thank you, did
for sure.
Fast Car on the Grammys not long
Yeah,
ago.
which was
Anyway,
which was beloved.
All right,
awesome.
We have got one more take on Purple Rain from Nashville. We're bringing on Rick. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Guys, that was incredible. What more can be said about this album? Well, let's just start. Dig, if you will, a picture of June 1984, late June 1984. I am in that liminal space between fresh out of high school, a couple weeks or a month and a half away from turning 18, a few weeks after that, starting college. And so it's that whole sense of this is the last summer. Of course it isn't, but that's what you're thinking. And like Scott said earlier, when this hit, it was ubiquitous. I didn't own a copy of it at the time, but it was everywhere on the radio, and for, most especially for us Generation Xers, it was all over MTV. When Doves Cry was it was the sexiest song I had ever heard up until that point. There's just the way it's crafted, the lyrics, Prince crawling across the bathroom floor in the video. This idea of a magnetism between two people that is so strong, even the animals around notice and pick up in their senses. It is just a masterpiece. I'll admit that several months back, I was a little salty with Pitchfork. They put out their top albums of the 80s. I was salty because one of my favorites, the Joshua Tree, was 49 or 42. I don't know. I thought that was a travesty. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Prince. And I cannot argue with their number one album of the 80s. It's Purple Rain. And I, listening to it again in preparation for this, throwing it on to the turntable, being immersed in all the things that Prince is doing. Funk, soul, rock, metal. It's all there, and it's the sound of possibility. It's the sound of stardom, of like I said, of an icon reaching his potential. It was absolutely mind blowing, and as I was listening to it again, I'm struck by the fact that it may be a church album, that Prince is inviting us in to a congregation of possibility that starts off. He addresses us as dearly beloved, going into celebrating this thing called life and the possibilities of the afterworld, and then we move all the way through to this closer that's almost like a one of those gospel bring the spirit down songs in Purple Rain, and all the way through. It's just an amazing album. These are songs that grab you, stay with you. Some of these songs, you're going to want to take a shower after listening to them. A hot shower for some, cold shower for others, and take your pick. But it is just an incredible album from an incredible artist, gone too soon, and I'm so glad that we got a chance to discuss this and visit it again. And so that's about all I've got to add to this. It's a magnificent album. I'm glad I finally got a copy of it. So.
Everyone, Rick Quinn, occasional writer for Pop Matters at popmatters.com. We call each other Sib from another crib. That's the all-inclusive version of brother from another mother or sister from another mister.
Indeed.
Is Sib from a different crib. Anyway, what a great coda. And you all are watching, if you are watching it on YouTube or Facebook Live, watching it right now, or watching it in rerun as it has been archived on the interwebs for posterity, the third episode of the Music Nerds Record Club. The Music Nerds Record Club is brought to you by 5 or 6 or 7 people on any given time who just adore listening to music and love talking about it. And I'm so grateful to my colleagues. And for the second half of each episode, after we study together an iconic album, so far we've done The Clash, we've done The Waterboys, and now we've done Prince. We will also be talking about our current listening. And we use a Harry Potter style sorting hat, and we pick out random names, and then we get into it. So kicking off with, and we talk about new releases, or what I have dubbed renewed releases, which is whatever you're listening to right now. And to kick off our round robin for the second half, we're going to bring back to the stage Joe. Joe, don't forget to unmute yourself, and everybody, don't forget to mute when you're off screen and unmute when you're on screen.
All right. You can hear me. Gus, Rick, that was great. Good stuff. Thank you. I've brought a couple of albums with me that I've been listening to lately. In no particular order is speaking of the 80s is Echo and the Bunnymen's Ocean Rain. I was listening to Spotify and Seven Seas came up, and as often happens when I hear a song from this, I'm like, my God, that's fucking awesome. It's a great sounding record that's got a mother load of mid 80s technical stuff going on in it, but used all very judiciously, like that. I don't know, what is it, that Roland chime sound and the gated reverb that was everywhere. Somehow it still sounds timeless, and it's like from the cover to the music, it just has a very transporting sort of effect on me, and I love it dearly. I also picked up a copy of A Love Supreme. For my fellow music nerds, I've been trying to sort of rebuild my record collection in addition to listening to new stuff. So I never actually owned this one before, but I knew I wanted more jazz, and I always found Coltrane was a great entryway. So I got this. It's pretty amazing. I don't even know how to discuss jazz except it's in the same way that Echo and the Bunnymen and Ocean Rain was. It's a pretty trans like it's evocative, and it's it just sort of takes you to a different place. The other thing I've been listening to a lot lately is this new record by a band that's been around a while that I never listened to before, called the Beavis Frond. I think the main dude in Beavis Frond is a multi-instrumentalist English eccentric named Nick Salomon. Anybody can back that up for me, but I've been for years a huge fan of Scott Miller's Game Theory and Loud Family, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with him, but he wrote a series of blog entries on the early internet called Music What Happened, which were eventually compiled into a book, which was a list of important music for him in each year of his life. And the Beavis Frond came up, and I'd heard of them a lot, and it's like, if you like Game Theory and Loud Family. So it's eccentric power pop. You could think Game Theory or Teenage Fan Club. There's a little more guitar wonky soloing in it, but it's a lot of fun, and it's I'm excited to finally get around to listening to them. If you just wanted one or two tracks, there's Mr. Fred's Disco and what's that other one that I loved? Gosh, I can't find it. Anyway, it's a great record. That's what I'm listening to. And I'm listening to Geddy Lee's memoir, My Effin' Life, on audio, and that's tremendously fun too. Sort of music related. That's what I got.
All right. Well, you inspired me to go run and grab a few records because I have a little list of things that I do not own that I've been listening to a lot. But I mean, I got to show off a little bit. So in my for my rap stuff, my hip hop I've been listening to, I am such a big fan of MF Doom. I got him on a ring, and his debut under MF Doom, that name Operation Doomsday, is one that I think is overlooked a lot because he followed it like within the next 5-ish years with Food and Mad Villainy, which is so extremely acclaimed, produced by Madlib. And I that album's amazing. It is really, there were really no skips throughout it. It is just impressive rap performance and amazing beat after impressive rap performance and amazing beat. I love it. In a similar realm, which is amazing rapping, amazing production, also produced by Madlib, my favorite producer really ever, is Freddie Gibbs. Pinata. This came out in 2014. And it is just like, it's one of the most consistent rap albums you will hear in the 2010s. Freddie is an absolutely incredible rapper. He doesn't have a ton of lyrical variety. It is mostly about his street life, and it is some of the most interesting rhymes about that topic that you will hear, period. Another rap album that I've been listening to a lot that I don't own yet is it's one of the first rap albums I ever listened to on my own whenever I was trying to get into the genre, was Dr. Dre's 2001. And it had been so long since I'd gone back through the entire record. And like songs like Forgot About Dre are so high quality to this day and so fun. And Dre is just such an important and incredible producer that I love that album so much. It is so replayable, and it's why it has the reputation it has as a classic for a reason. A rock album from the 2010s that I have loved since I heard it, which weirds some people out because a lot of people did not love it since they first heard it, is my favorite Jack White album, apart from White Stripes, got Boarding House Reach. It is crazy. It is improvisational, jazzy, and powerful. I mean, these songs are huge. They're massive, exciting listens. The instrumentation is so dense and fun. I have so much fun listening to this album. And I have for a long time. I got to see that tour back at Bridgestone years back, and it is just so good. He is an incredible live performer. I've seen him a couple times now with my dad, and I love him. And then one of my absolute, within the last couple of years, become one of my favorite albums is Gorillaz' Plastic Beach. This has a few of my favorite songs ever on it. Empire Ants, I think, is probably, if I had to compile at this point, it probably would creep onto a top 10 songs ever list for me, featuring Little Dragon. It is, it's perfect. It's so beautiful. This is a beautiful album. It's unique. It has so many different styles, some amazing features from people like Little Dragon and Del the Funky Homo Sapien, and just Snoop Dogg is on it. It doesn't get much better. You don't get many better sample platters that everything is so high quality as you do on Plastic Beach. And then some other ones that I do not own that I've been listening to a lot and want to talk about, Sly and the Family Stone en masse. I've fallen deep in love with Sly, and If You Want Me to Stay is my favorite song from them. Also, Big Thief's Dragon New Warm Mountain, I Believe in You. It is a long album reflected by its very long album title. It's just full of incredible, bubbly indie folk songs, and I adore it. It's so easy to listen to. Another folk album that is such a classic from an indie legend. Got the Microphones, The Glow Part 2. Phil Elverum, I got to see him a few months back in Atlanta, and he is he's one of my favorite songwriters, period. There are so many tracks on there that could make me cry if I heard them right now. And that's kind of the mood I'm in right now. So I adore that record. And then last one I'm going to talk about, everyone's heard this album. It's so classic. Songs in the Key of Life has entered my rotation with the slight teases of spring that we've had so far here in Cookeville. And it brings me so much joy. It is it is maybe the best album, it might be the best album. It's perfect. There's not a misplayed note on there. Stevie has so much personality. And all of these records have painted my year in a beautiful way so far. And I've kept it to mostly older stuff. I'm hiding some of my new releases for the end of the year so I can have them on my list and surprise you guys. But yeah, this is what I've been how I've been spending my time recently is these albums.
Gus, Boarding House Reach is such a fascinating album, and you're right. Jack White is amazing live. I got to see him at the end of that last tour at the Blue Room at Third Man Records, and that may be one of the best concerts I've ever seen in my life. Packed in with 150 of my newest, closest friends was just fantastic. Some of the things that I've been listening to lately, I'm in the transition of putting my listening room back together in a new house. And so now that I got the stereo up and running, I've been throwing some records on that I hadn't listened to in a long time. Spent the evening revisiting the Smiths' "The Queen is Dead" the other night, and it's just that lush, melancholy, beautiful music that comes out of the Smiths, along with that some really quirky lyrics. Was pretty neat. I'm been involved in a new release Discord group that's been picking something each week and trying to take a look at new releases. I spent a lot of time last week with the new album by Schoolboy Q, Blue Lips, which is generally out of the genre that I typically listen to. It was fascinating musically, a little unsettling in some ways, probably intentionally and in a good way, but it was an interesting excursion. The album that I've been just sort of obsessed with lately is Yardak's new album, "Where's My Utopia?" And there's the rest of the album. I was introduced to Yardak by the barber who cuts my hair, Stephen Mason. Those of you who are into the CCM, contemporary Christian music, you may know him as the guitarist of the band Jars of Clay. If you're a Nashville Soccer Club fan, you may know him as Soccer Moses, the unofficial mascot. Nonetheless, when I was getting a haircut recently, he said, "You got to listen to this this band, and they are quirky and philosophical and post-punk and digging into all these different things that really is about embracing the absurdity of life and just sort of finding an existential hope and choosing to move forward. It scratches an itch that things like David Byrne and the Talking Heads do for me, and I have found it an endlessly fascinating album. Those are some of the things I'm listening to right now. I'm also digging the new Casey Musgraves album. One of our members who isn't here tonight, Scott Winchell, has written some beautiful things about them on his Substack, Winchell World. If you get a chance to check those out, but the album is awesome. I heard it described as a contemporary Laurel Canyon album, and I think that's perfect. But those are some things I've been listening to.
There we go. Tasting my own medicine. Thanks, Rick. So first and foremost, let's have a call back to the last time we met when we talked about the Waterboys, This Is the Sea. The box set chronicling the making of it is now out. It's called 1985. It's a sprawling 6-disc set with a 200-page book. I'm slowly getting my way through it. I'm savoring each one. And then after I'm done listening to each disc, I'm going to sit down with the book, and it'll probably take me about 8 months to read the book, and I'm going to love every syllable of it. Contrary to what people think, I'm not always listening to music, and the fact that I am admitting that makes me sad. So I'm trying to be better about it, and I think it's helping because this time last year, there's always music coming out, but there was a lot of stuff that I really had to try and get into. This year, at this early point of the year, there's a lot of stuff coming out that I'm really just effortlessly digging. And one of them is the latest from Alinda Segarra, who operates under the Nom de Plume, Hooray for the Riff Raff. I've been a fan for about 10 years. The album Small Town Heroes got me hooked. I love The Navigator. Wasn't so crazy about Life on Earth, but The Past is Still Alive. Don't call it a throwback. She's moving straight ahead. She just happens to sonically be in the same area as Small Town Heroes, and it's a record that I'm still in the process of processing, but it's one of those records that I recognize I love as I'm growing to love it more. Of course, digging the new Casey. I've only spun it once, but the first thing that jumped out at me was just how melodically strong this is. And that to me means everything, because great lyrics are great, but if they're buried and they're mumbled and there's no great melodies you don't have that 1-2 punch, then I'm out. And Casey's got melodies for days. Loved Golden Hour. Wasn't so crazy about the last album. You see a trend here. New Bleachers, like it. Not sure if I love it. Bleachers live, fucking awesome. Looking forward to spending more time with this. The UK band Idols, Tank, spelled with that extra G there. I always liked them, but I'm surrounded by people who are ravenous about them, so that lit a fire under my butt to buy this, and I like it, and I'm digging it more with every listen. For me, it's kind of got a more grimy Kid A vibe, and I don't know if that has to do with the fact that Nigel Godrich co-produced it, but it's a record that the more I listen to, the more I like it. But the record that I think I like the best out of the recent releases has got to be from The Secret Weapon from Washington, D.C., Mary Timony's Untamed the Tiger. Mary was in a band back in the 90s called Helium. She was in a supergroup called Wild Flag with Carrie and Janet from Slater-Kenny. But for me, my serious introduction to Mary Timony was her power trio, X-Hex. And if you're a fan of Joy, I highly recommend X-Hex. This record, like the Hooray for the Riff Raff record, I'm in the process of processing it, but I'm loving it every time I'm listening to it. And the thing that is evidently clear with this is that Mary has always been a really good guitarist, but on this record, she really shows it, and not in a show-offy way. She plays in service of the song, which, dare I say it, puts her in the league of the likes of Richard Thompson. So, Mary Timony, Untamed the Tiger. Who's next?
That's me. All right. Well, first, I just want to take a moment to talk about last week. I wasn't able to be here, but I got to listen to the stream, and I enjoyed y'all's tribute to Mojo Nixon. That's one that I'm going to spend a little more time listening to. And I did finally spin the Waterboys, and I enjoyed it. It sounded like something that would be up y'all's alley, and was more musically interesting than I even hoped it to be. So I want to spend more time with the Waterboys discography. And I think it was something one of y'all said on the stream last time, was just how with streaming, everything is so accessible. I can listen to anything and everything all of the time, anywhere. And I don't have the opportunity to just like sit with an album, even like I used to with my CDs in my car, the CDs on my stereo. So it's just so tough to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get into the Waterboys because I have that album, because I'm listening to all the other songs I'm into. Lately, I've been more songs focused than digging into any one album. But let me get into my recommendations. I am currently super stoked on the new album from Aaron Lee Tasjan that's about to come out in maybe a couple weeks. There's 3 singles out so far for the album called Stellar Evolution. Aaron Lee Tasjan is a Nashville artist. He's been producing music here for good several years with some good critical acclaim. But this new album is going to be really cool. The 3 singles off of it are really cool. There's a ballad called Dylan Shades. There's a kind of silly, trippy song called The Drugs Did Me. But the song that I have on repeat is called Horror of It All. And it's about coming up in a small town and being closeted and just not knowing what that feels like, but also the joy of like being a person and coming out, and just sonically it just really resonates with me and tells that really interesting story of growing up. So that's my strong recommendation. Also, another big album I'm looking forward to is coming from Pearl Jam. Their first single dropped in the last month. It's called Dark Matter. And I'm super excited because they're getting more back into the, like, I don't know, psych rock weirdo stuff that's not just straight rock sound. And it's even a little more like metal. So I'm really excited to hear what the other tracks are like. And it's going to be a fun album from Pearl Jam. I was also getting stoked on the new Idols album. There's a couple songs on there that are real bangers. I really like Gift Horse. It's just fun. Let's see. And a throwback album. My slightly older millennial friend got me into this 1999 album from DC emo band Dismemberment Plan called Emergency and I. And that's one I missed coming up. And now I'm a Dismemberment Plan fan. There it is. That's all I want to share. Who's next?
What a great show we've had. I'm going to share mine, and we'll have a couple of seconds for everybody to get on the screen for last call, 30-second speed dating round robin. I'm Teacher on the Radio, Sunfrog, Andrew, Andy, Smith from Cookeville via Detroit and other places. And I absolutely love Music Nerds Record Club. What a great night we've had. Let me co-sign the Mary Timony that Scott just mentioned, and the Casey Musgraves, I think that's come up, and a couple of the other mentions, as well as co-signing Scott Winchell's take on Casey Musgraves over at the Winchell World Substack. I don't know if anybody remembers the Dresden Dolls. I don't always listen to cabaret punk, but when I want to listen to some good circus, hobo, cabaret, burlesque punk, I do want to include Amanda Palmer. And she released an album at the beginning of the year that's a live album. It seems to be a little bit pandemic-y, called New Zealand Survival Songs, and each track's like 9 minutes long. And it's very weird. And I listened to it last night and this morning and absolutely loved Amanda Palmer. And I just found out the Dresden Dolls are reuniting and are working on a new album, and they're playing in Nashville on Holy Saturday, March 30th, at the Brooklyn Bowl. And I'm very tempted to go catch me some Dresden Dolls. There's a folk singer called Joe Pug who does the Working Songwriter podcast. It's a phenomenal podcast. And Joe Pug has a new album. I've given it at least one spin. Absolutely loved it. I've gotten through the new MGMT about once or twice, but there is a single on there that I absolutely love that I'm sure I'll be going back to. I think it's like Dancing in Babylon or Dancing in the Apocalypse or something. It's about the 4th track on there. Also, Adeem the Artist has already dropped their first single. Their album is coming up on May the 3rd. It's a Friday, and their release party is going to be at the Basement East, The Beast, on May the 9th. But being an Adim super fan who's written about Adim and had Adim on the radio show, teacher on the radio before, I was able to send Adim a DM on one of their socials. And within minutes, I had the exclusive reviewers copy of their new album in the inbox, and I'll be writing a review of that for sure. But it's very produced. It's a real produced album. It's rock and country and folk, but it's phenomenal, and it's really growing on me. It didn't necessarily. There was a rawness to some of the stuff on White Trash Revelry and Cast Iron Pansexual that dug its teeth in immediately, and that's how I became hooked and became an Adim the Artist super fan. But they are up to something, y'all, and I'm looking forward to the release of Anniversary coming out on May the 3rd. But let me just say, and this kind of reiterates what we've already heard a little bit of. I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see if I can do that. It's probably going to oh no, there it is. Let's see. Maybe not. I'm going to try to show you guys some pictures, but I'm completely obsessed with the Past is Still Alive, Hooray for the Riff Raff album. So much so that I rearranged things and put money on the credit card to go up to Brooklyn to catch their tour. And they are playing in Knoxville on Friday at Big Ears. I can't afford a Big Ears pass, but I'm trying. I've sent emails to their publicists, and I'm trying to get me some comps to the. They're playing at the afternoon at like 1 p.m. on Friday. But here are some of my pictures from seeing Hooray for the Riff Raff in Brooklyn at the Williamsburg Music Hall, including the little poster that I ripped off the wall there. And then just the other night, I was able to get over to the Bijou Theater, and Hole in My Head by Lauren Jane Grace is definitely one of my favorite new releases. I've been really getting into punk a lot more, but like even within punk, I do lean towards folk punk and pop punk. And Lauren Jane Grace really emphasizes both pop punk and folk punk. So I really just adore her. I adore the new album, Hole in My Head. My favorite song on there is called I'm Not a Cop. It's absolutely hilarious, but she has some other more serious songs on there. And apparently she's assembled a new band that includes a member of the Drive-By Truckers in her new band. And they are so in love with each other, this new band, including her new wife, who's also a comedian. Her name is Paris, that they've got another EP, they said, that's coming out for sure. And then the opening band I'd never heard before are from Nashville. They're called Thelma and the Sleaze. They were so unbelievable. And there's a couple pictures over to the right of the slide of Thelma and the Sleaze. So I'm really into both of those records. And one of my new hobbies, I just want to put a shout out to novels. I just found a new podcast called The Rock is Lit podcast, and it only focuses on novels that have rock and roll or music or popular music at some component in there. And actually, this was not from that podcast. This was recommended by Ann Powers of NPR. She's kind of my friend. She even mentioned me on one of her blogs last year. I was so honored to get a shout out from Ann Powers from NPR Music, but she gave a shout out to this novel that takes place in Nashville in the 70s. Jeannie and I got the Audible, and we're listening to it right now. We have not finished it, and it's a mystery and crime novel, so I have no spoilers because I haven't gotten that far in the book yet, but I'm absolutely loving it. But this is a new side obsession of mine, is rock novels. So let me bring the whole crew back on stage. Those are some of the things I'm listening to right now. I love that people are going back to what they were listening to, and bringing Echo and the Bunnymen. And I heard Stevie Wonder and Sly and the Family Stone and Jack White all up in this thing. So good on us on going and circling back a little bit. So last words.
My last words, rest in peace, Carl Wallinger. He used to be a water boy, and he was in the band World Party, and he passed away on March 11th. And since we're talking about Prince and books, I want to plug my friend Carolyn Pruse's novel. None of this would have happened if Prince were alive. And I want to say that Gus is keeping me on my toes, and I've got some serious hip-hop blind spots to fill.
I just can't get over how on point Gus's take on Prince was. That was amazing.
Oh, thanks, guys.
It was good stuff. I had been listening to a book by Ned Blackhawk called Rediscovering America, which is a history of America. I don't want to say, yeah, I guess it is written from a Native American perspective, but it's entering them into the picture where they've been just sort of a historical victim for us to feel bad about. And I learned this one amazing, mind-boggling fact that from the time Europeans got here around 1492 to 1776, the population declined in North America. So if you think about all the European, I don't have to do that math for you, but it's pretty mind-boggling. Not to be a bummer, but it's one of those things I have to keep telling people, just because you think you have an idea of how something is and how bad it is or how good it is, and you just don't sometimes. It's just kind of still blowing me away. Anyway, it's an important book. I think it won the National Book Award, and I'm not done, but I'd recommend it if you want to feel shitty. It's good. Seriously, it's good, but it's hard sometimes.
If you're not already feeling shitty enough, try this.
Yeah, you can feel in the longer view of things.
Our next Music Nerds is going to be on April 15th. Rick, so it'll be another Monday night episode at 7 p.m. Central. Rick, have you picked your record yet?
I have.
Why don't you drop that on us right now?
Okay. Well, I was tempted to take us out of the 80s, but I picked a record that was transitional for me in a lot of ways, consciousness raising. So on April 15th, we are going to do Public Enemy. It takes a nation of millions to hold us back. So
nice.
Just gonna say, if I had picked, that would have been my choice. I'd already thought about it.
Well, that means
awesome.
Gus, that opens up something else when it comes around to you. And once everybody's gone once, you'll get to go twice, because I think this thing has legs. Any other closing words? Amy, do you have any closing words for us tonight?
No, it's been quite an honor to get to present with y'all. I love hearing all your recommendations, and I'm about to stack up my playlist with some good stuff to listen to.
And I want to since all these guys have their own like blogs and columns and shows and brands, I want to thank them for letting me convene this and streaming it on the Teacher on the Radio YouTube channel and Facebook page, hopefully getting some clicks to sustain the Teacher on the Radio far into the future. So everybody, it's going to be a good spring. It's first day of spring is officially on Thursday. So happy spring, everyone. And let's stay in touch on our group chat. And we'll see you all on April 15th. And Public Enemy is on tap. And we'll sign off. Y'all are welcome to stay in the back room, but I'm going to end the public stream. So good night from the Music Nerds
everybody.
Club.
Storming the castle.